Whose ghostly apparition was captured in a photograph?
What tragedy led a little girl to haunt the building?
How many ghosts haunt this famous American castle?
Find out the answers to these questions and more as we uncover the chilling hauntings and history from Henderson Castle in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Erica.
And this is The Haunted Atlas, a haunted U.S. podcast.
In the interest of fully exploring history of certain locations, the Haunted Atlas may discuss sensitive or disturbing topics. Listener discretion is advised.
Perched atop a hill, Henderson Castle is a stunning Gilded Age mansion that captures the grandeur of a bygone era. Its expansive porches and iconic tower evoke the elegance and luxury of Old World America. But what else might be lurking on this estate? In the mid-1800s, Frank Henderson, who was a prominent Michigan businessman, built a textile business that actually served both the government and secret societies.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and that's the start of Henderson Castle and the Hendersons in the area. He had seen great success in his business ventures, and he wanted a home to reflect this wealth. So, in 1888, he started work on Henderson Castle. It was finally completed 7 years later in 1895.
My gosh, it must have been massive. 7 years?
Right. And quite a pretty penny because it cost $72,000 back then.
Oh my goodness.
And inflation calculators only go back to the early 1900s, but that is well over $2 million in current currency.
That's incredible for back then.
Yes. And I mean, he did serve the government and secret societies and everything between.
Yeah.
But definitely a wealthy man. The home had an elevator, a ballroom, 7 bathrooms, and 25 rooms.
An elevator?
Yeah.
I've only ever seen elevators in homes in movies. Like, I did not know that was a real thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I feel like historical homes, it was really common because they would carry up stuff for serving.
Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. I had never really thought of it in terms of like people carrying up things to serve. Like, I think I was just thinking of it as like people I'm sure they use it too, but like, I'm just thinking of it as like them not wanting to use the stairs.
No, I don't think it was for convenience. I think it was like service elevators primarily. But who knows? It is a luxury item.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Henderson died in 1899. So that's only 4 years after his castle was completed.
Yeah.
Very sad. Especially after he spent $72,000 on it. That's a lot of money to spend on a house, a long time to wait, only to get to live in it for 4 years.
Yeah, really. I mean, was his family in it after?
Yes.
Okay.
His wife, Mary, did live there until her death, which was in 1907.
Okay.
So she had a little longer there. The Henderson children then took over the house, and I would assume a family home like this, you might as well keep it in the family. It was likely completely paid off, but they actually sold the house in 1919.
Whoa, that's really surprising. I guess, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, okay, so if he paid $2 million in our money then, I'm assuming inflation just in those years, so I can't even imagine what they got for it.
Since the house had only been in the family for about 24 years at that time, they didn't have strong emotional attachment to it, especially if for the 12 years after their mom passed away, they didn't really go there.
Oh, yeah.
Then they didn't really have time to form any attachment to it.
True. And again, just so much money.
Yeah.
For each of them.
Yeah. The Hopper family was the next group to own the castle. Throughout the 1920s, many updates were made to the home to modernize it because technology was advancing so rapidly then that the house that was finished in 1895 was considered outdated. They converted stables that were on the property to a modern garage to account for cars. And then again in the 1940s, the castle transitioned hands, but this time it was converted to apartments.
You know, that actually makes a lot of sense. I think if we're talking about modernization, there must have been so many rooms in that place.
Right. And if you think about it, you can modernize something only so much without making substantial changes to it.
Yes.
It's already an expensive house, so it's already over $2 million, I'm assuming, to purchase it in the 1920s. And then you're paying to modernize it, doing all of these things. That's a big investment.
Yes.
But if you break it into apartments, I feel like it's more bite-sized chunks. And then you have a source of income.
Well, right, because I'm sure that they can charge a little bit extra on top of just the room care for the amenities in the place.
Right. You live in this stunning castle.
Yeah.
I would love to live in a historical castle like that.
I know, it'd be so nice. And honestly, with a garage.
Exactly.
That is not something apartments usually offer.
Yeah, and with an elevator already built in from the original home, obviously it needs to be modernized. But a lot of things that they would need, it sounds like they would already have.
Right.
In 1957, the building was set to become the Kalamazoo Arts Center, but actually ended up as college dorms instead. And I think that's so cool. I can't imagine going to college and getting to live in a historical castle.
Yes, that must be so cool.
Yeah, and it makes sense. The transition from apartments to dorms, very, very simple.
Right. Because again, okay, so then they must have added like shared utilities. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, that's a good point.
So it probably was so easy to convert to dorms.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Or I wonder if every dorm had their own bathroom. That would make it even more appealing.
Oh my gosh, yes, that would be A1.
In the mid-1970s, the castle once again became privately owned, and in 1981, Fred Eagle Royce purchased it. Fred made many updates and restoration attempts. He actually allowed filming of movies in there, which I think is really cool.
Yes.
In the mid-2000s, he sold the home, and since then it's been a bed and breakfast. Again, makes sense. You have all these individual rooms. Why not lean towards something like that?
Yeah, and honestly, like bed and breakfasts that are in these historical buildings are usually so cute and like so interesting to stay at.
I just think it's amazing, the history there, to go stay there now, over 100 years old. Think of the people that have walked there, lived there, etc.
Yeah.
It did change ownership during the time that it did change ownership since it's been a bed and breakfast in 2011. And under that new ownership, it added a restaurant and a spa.
Ooh, that's so cool.
Yeah, so now it's like a really luxury experience, which is super cool. I feel like it's circled all the way back around. It started off as this really luxurious family castle, and then, it became apartments. Not that they weren't luxury apartments, but less focused on luxury.
Right.
And now it's back to like a cute bed and breakfast with all these nice amenities and stuff.
Yeah, full circle.
Yeah. Over 20 years. While Henderson Castle offers a luxurious stay and beautiful architecture, many guests report that it also offers ghostly encounters.
Hi, I'm Hannah.
And I'm Matt Hannah.
We're Horror Hour with the Hannahs, a married couple who love digging into the guts of horror movies.
Literally and figuratively.
Whether it's new releases or cult classics, on our podcast we break down the scares, themes, and hidden messages with just the right amount of love and humor, with some occasional bickering.
So grab your popcorn and your emotional support blanket and join us Wednesdays
for a spooky good time with Horror Hour with the Hannahs.
Available wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe today, if you dare.
It's often the case in hauntings that those with strong emotional attachments linger, and Henderson Castle is no exception. The original owners are Frank and Mary Henderson, and they're said to still roam the grounds, even in their afterlife.
Which is so nice.
It is nice, but it's kind of surprising to me because they did not live there for a long time.
That's true. Maybe when Frank passed, his spirit was like, okay, I'm just going to stay here because it's only been 4 years and I deserve to live in this castle for as long as I'd like to. And then maybe Mary just joined him afterwards.
That's true. That's a really sweet way to look at it as an intelligent haunting. Mine was more of that's where they died.
Oh,
so that's where they're staying.
Also true, yeah.
It could be either. It's really sweet if they're choosing to stay there.
Yes.
And just because they were only there for 4 years doesn't mean that it didn't have emotional ties to them.
Right.
Many people report that Mary is seen at the top of the staircase looking down. And to me, this is kind of like looking for guests or maybe even greeting guests. But she's also seen in the Victorian room, which actually used to be her changing room.
Ah, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And I do, I think her at the top of the stairs might even have come from the apartment stage or the dorm room stage, because assumedly it's younger people in there,
Mhm.
especially when it was a college dorm. So I can almost imagine her being like a mother figure at the top of the stairs, just like watching over everybody.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, that makes sense. Like watching over the goings on of the house. She's the lady of the castle.
Yeah.
That's really sweet. And I think her changing room also makes a ton of sense. That was a very personal, private space for her.
Yes.
And she did live there for 12 years.
Right. And okay, so if we're thinking about a bunch of people in the house, she also might have been like, who are these people? And I'm just going to like retreat into my changing room for a second.
Yes, she starts at the top of the stairs, observes the craziness, says, I hate these people, and goes to her changing room.
Yeah.
I love that. She's like, I did not invite these people into my house. Why are they here?
Right.
She is not the only spirit. Her and Frank, rather, are not the only spirits. There's also the spirit of Claire Burley, who's a Spanish-American war veteran who actually served with the Henderson's son. He was known to be one of their son's best friends. Some investigations have actually seen the word Claire written in dust in the castle.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because it's Clare. And I think if you saw that without knowing the history, you might think it's a misspelling
Right.
of the female name Claire. You might think it's misspelling of even Clear or, something strange. But it is, in fact, the name of the son's friend.
Now, in dust, is this like in various places in the castle?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think so. And I will get more into Claire's ghost. But just knowing that, do you think Claire is the one writing it, or do you think one of the other ghosts there is writing it?
I thought it was another person almost sort of trying to get Claire's attention.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like writing out his name.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Other ways that this spirit is interacting is through EVPs that we can't know definitively are Claire, but they think are. And the words flowers and candy were captured in an investigation after the investigators specifically offered flowers and candy to Claire.
Oh.
Shadow figures that match Claire's general description of, height and weight have been seen roaming the house, so they do think that his spirit is there. I was thinking, knowing all of that the spirit seems to want to interact, that he's writing his name to try to be like, hey, I'm here. Please talk to me.
Yeah, that's actually that's a great idea.
I like your theory that it could be someone else. I'm also wondering if it's communication between Mary and Claire, for example, or Frank and Claire, because they do know each other. Or my final theory is that Claire is like the spokesperson of the castle.
Oh, that would be great.
Maybe because Frank's not really seen much.
Yes.
Mary is seen, but not really interacted with a lot. So they might be saying, please talk to Claire. Claire will speak to you. We're going to go sit in the changing room.
Yeah, that's a really good thought. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Frank and Mary are just kind of background characters in this sense, where they just kind of want to be left alone.
I agree, especially because they were old age when they lived there, etc.
Yeah.
In addition to Claire and Mary and Frank, there's also a child spirit that many believe is a young girl. Her story is that her father was a worker in the castle. One day she decided to climb the scaffolding to write her name in the stain that they were using, and she fell and broke her neck.
Oh no.
One medium said that the girl is 6 years old and named Christine. The lore of the castle says that her name was partially written in the stain before she fell.
Yeah.
And cannot be painted over, despite many attempts.
Oh, wow.
So it's as if she wants her story to be known.
Yeah, of course.
But what I think is interesting here is we have two hauntings linked to written names, which we don't see a lot of places.
Is it possible maybe that Claire saw Christine's name written in the stain and kind of got the idea to write his name in the dust, or, somebody else, if it is another spirit?
That's a good idea, especially if it can't be painted over. Claire could see the Christine and think, this is working really well.
Yes.
And keep doing it. That makes sense. I do like that theory. I think that the reason the stain can't be covered is because Christine wants her story known. But do you have any other theories?
Honestly, no, because I think at the old jail museum in Jim Thorpe, there's that handprint on the wall. And I think that was really to signify, the person that was there claiming their innocence. I really think this is just sort of the same thing of like, her name is there because she just wants to make sure that her memory is preserved.
I just wanted to know if you had any additional theories for it. This next one's a fun one. There is also the spirit of a dog.
Oh, I love animal spirits.
Me too. And I just think it's so sweet to think of, all of these spirits interacting. Guests have actually reported that the ghost dog will jump into bed with them at night and they'll feel, the weight of an animal on their bed.
Which is so sweet. I think I'd be a little bit scared if I didn't know the history. But if I knew the history of the hauntings, I would honestly just be excited.
It's interesting because I think if I was at the inn and this happened to me, I would think that it was in my head because I'm so used to having pets that jump up on the bed.
Yeah.
So I don't know how I would chalk this up to the paranormal,
Yes. Actually, that's a good point because it's also dependent on what stage of sleep you're at when the dog jumps into bed. Because if you're all the way falling asleep, you're like basically right before you're falling asleep, so you notice it, you probably would think it was your own pet if you have one.
Right. And even if I didn't think, it's my own pet, if I didn't have a pet and I was laying there and I felt the pressure, I would wonder first if I was just imagining it. But then if I decided, okay, it is paranormal, once I've decided it's paranormal, how can I tell if it's a dog or a person? I guess based on weight?
Oh, yeah. That's a good question. I don't know. Is it like when you say that you can kind of feel the dog there, I'm assuming there's no sensations of like fur?
No, it's just, my understanding is it's just the weight of like a dog curling up at the end of the bed.
Right.
And I guess maybe the curling action or the way it's weighted could give credence, or I think the way that it's weighted could contribute to the understanding that it's an animal versus a human. But I was thinking it could even be Christine.
Yeah.
If we're going by just weight.
Yeah.
So I think that's challenging. I think it's a cute haunting, but I think it's definitely challenging to narrow it down and say that it's definitively paranormal and that it's a recurring thing.
Yes.
In 1990, a director from Kalamazoo College came to the castle to take pictures. And this is the first known case of a lady in white in the castle.
Oh.
There are many ladies in white, and for those that might not know, typically the woman in white or lady in white is looking for something. But in this case, she appeared in the photo by the piano as if she was ready to turn the music page.
Oh, that's a really specific movement.
Yeah, it's very specific. It's very specific placement. To me, it means she's not sad or looking for anything. It's truly capturing an aspect of how she would have lived.
Yeah.
My thought is this might be Mary Henderson.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Another thought, what if it's Christine kind of imagining it as a grown-up? She did pass when she was a little girl, but I do wonder if she ever kind of like plays pretend, for lack of a better term.
Yes.
I don't really know that spirits are known to do that, but I know that they can change their presentation. So I'm wondering if it could be Christine or it could be Mary. It also could be someone else, but do you have any thoughts on who it could be?
Well, music is a really powerful thing. So if someone was a page turner there, for the pianist in the house, then it doesn't surprise me that they're there now. Because I think, if someone's willing to stand there, music obviously means, or assumedly means a lot to them. I wonder if your Christine theory is correct, if she really loved the music in the house. And so as she's imagining herself older, if that's what it is, she's kind of like imagining herself partaking in that. And kind of same with Mary. I don't know that I have any other theories. I think just this particular haunting is sort of like an emotional thing for me. I mean, maybe not elicits my own emotions, but I know how important music is to me. And if I could be there in the afterlife, like maybe the spirit's hearing the music and we just don't.
Yeah, that's true.
And
again, I think in a situation like this, it can be challenging to know what era they're from, because my first thought is it's from when it was family home. and you would have a piano that people would gather around, like you're saying, a very big deal in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
But I guess it could be from when it was an apartment or even a dorm.
But yeah, I feel like there's not enough information for me to narrow down, but I really do like your theories about it possibly being Mary or even Christine sort of imagining herself.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely an opportunity for further investigation. It's always so important to know the history going into these investigations, because then you can kind of draw from it. For example, if you can get a spirit to engage with the piano, you could guess that it's this lady in white, and then you could go from there to try to narrow down a name, an age, etc.
I wonder if you could like play music from the different eras and see if the spirit responds to one or the other compared to, compare the responses from one era to the next.
That's a great idea, actually. Lack of response versus response. That's a great idea. And that would help narrow it down, because even Mary and Christine are from different eras.
Yes.
There are also paranormal phenomena that aren't attributed to any specific spirit, and I always put these into the category of general hauntings. Investigators report feeling tapping on their arm while in one of the rooms that's called the Dutch room, and then they heard "go away."
Oh, so it might be someone in an apartment or a dorm, sort of like, hello, why are you here?
Yeah, or even Frank or Mary.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
if your theory about Mary on the staircase is correct, it could be Mary. Go away.
Yeah.
There are also cases of strange sounds and doors opening on their own, and I am always very skeptical of the general statement of strange sounds.
Yes.
Without knowing specifically what it is, could it be the heating system turning on? Could it be the house settling? It's a very old castle. It could be, I think, a variety of things. And similarly with doors opening on their own, I would want to know for sure that it's been debunked that the doors can swing on their own.
I was going to say, depending on what doors they're talking about, it almost gives it more credence or less credence to me. If we're talking about doors that used to be apartment doors, I would almost have more thought to the paranormal, because I'm assuming when those were apartments and college dorms, you can't have them swinging open and closed. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like they have to be, I'm sure safety comes first, privacy comes first. So if it's those doors, I would say if those doors have been modernized, then it would be easier to debunk. But if it's like one of the back doors that may not have been modernized because it's just not important, then yeah, I mean, even a draft coming in, if it's an older door.
That's actually a great point. I didn't consider that it's a bed and breakfast right now. So if it is any of the doors to the bedrooms, I would say that's paranormal, because there's no way the owners would let the door to a private room swing open. So that's a good point. Maybe that gives it a little bit more credit, depending on which door it is. There are also cases of the cabinets in the maids section opening on their own, which is interesting. Similar thought process, of course. Could they be weighted a strange way that they're swinging open? But I'd imagine if this is happening chronically, the owners would want to fix it.
Yes, because I'm sure that's annoying.
Right. You don't want to find all the cabinets open, especially if it's a bed and breakfast and you have guests that might find their way back there.
Yeah.
You don't want them getting into your dishes, cleaning products, etc. And to give it more credit, it's not just one cabinet, it's all of them.
Oh, well, that's really interesting. And I'm assuming they're not all facing the same way, right? So yeah. So that gives it way more credence to me, because I was going to say the other thing is the house might have settled in a slant. But if they're coming from different directions, then that debunks that.
Yeah, because they would, being on opposite sides, they'd have to open differently.
Yeah.
Visitors also report hearing footsteps throughout the house, even when they're alone. I think it can be challenging in a bed and breakfast to know that you're alone. I know footsteps can really echo in some of these old buildings, especially buildings like a castle that might have more stone to them, less surfaces to absorb the sound. I think it is unlikely that they're alone. For example, if you wake up in the middle of the night and go to the bathroom, you might think, oh, I'm, quote, alone.
Right.
And I heard footsteps. But could it be a guest in the next room? Could it be someone in the hall, etc.? So I don't know. What's your take on the footsteps?
Well, I agree. I think I'm always a little skeptical of footsteps when we're talking about public places like this, especially because when people say they hear footsteps, are they also possibly just talking about creaking? Because then at that point, that could also just be the house settling. Like that might not even be. If we're talking about thumping, though, I agree with your statement of gives it a little more credence than my theory of it just being like the house settling. But also, how do you really know?
Yeah. Unless you are a worker there or the owner and you really, really know, okay, then I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But I think it's challenging to truly know. The last paranormal claim is that lights flicker in the house. And again, I go back and forth on light flickering, especially in old buildings. But because this is an actively used building, I think it gets more credit from me because it is a novelty to stay at this old historical castle. But you also want to create a luxury experience. So because of that, if your lights are regularly flickering and you're the owner, you're going to fix that.
Yes, definitely.
But can we definitively say it's paranormal? I'm not sure.
No, I think it would have to be one of those things where, you like replace the light bulb with a new one and see if it still flickers.
Right.
Like maybe that's a way to kind of give it more credence or not.
Right. Or is something else happening with the light bulb? If you're having the light bulb and the cabinets and the footsteps, then okay, that's, not going to be a coincidence.
Right.
If you have been to Henderson Castle, we would love to hear your stories. You can email us at theteam@hauntedus.com and include Haunted Atlas episode 13 in the subject. You can also find us on Instagram @hauntedus and send us your stories there. Tune in to our upcoming episode to see the next place where we drop the pin on our adventure across the haunted US. It was researched by Sarah Sweeney, supported by research from Haunted US head writer Mitch Gott, and production assistance by David Sweeney. With music by Colleen Johnson. Our executive producer is Brandon Rugsey. Haunted Atlas is a production of Haunted US. Visit hauntedus.com for more information.